Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Mooney, and I want to thank you for joining me today. So today we're going to do a little bit of something different. We're going to do a horror movie. This is my first review, so y'all kind of bear with me. It's kind of rambly. So the first movie we're going to do is considered to be the grandfather of the slasher era. I grew up in the 80s, so the slasher era is my favorite subgenre of horror. It's the movies that I grew up with, right? Now, Halloween 1978 is directed by John Carpenter. It stars Jamie Lee Curtis, PJ Souls, and of course, Donald Pleasence. Donald Pleasence is a great actor and was by this time, and it was such a coup to have him in this little low budget thriller. And of course, he just turned it all the way up to 11 and did it in the best way possible, right? So let me give you a little backstory on me and Halloween. And I didn't see the first two Halloween movies until 1989, right around the time that the fourth one was coming out. So when I first got into horror movies was about 84ish. They're about and I grew up in the 70s and into the 80s, and so we had limited TV and all that. So I had seen Jaws, I had seen Duel, and things like that on TV, and growing up, and then that led me on, of course, like most people of my era, into the slasher films that were king in the 80s. When I first started getting into it, I saw Friday the 13th, I saw a few others, saw Night of the Living Dead, and, talking to my friends at school and friends that I had out of school, um, they just kept telling me how great the Halloween movies were. And they just kept referring to, the Halloween movies. So I assumed at 11 years old, we all know what assume is, but I assumed at 11 years old that meant all the Halloween movies. Halloween 3 had been out about a year. So when I went to rent the Halloween movies to see what everybody else was on about and how awesome they were, the first two were rented, and the only choice I had was 3. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is not a slasher movie. That's what I was into. That's what most people were into in that era. Halloween 3 is an odd hybrid between witchcraft and sci-fi, and 11-year-old me hated it. Absolutely hated it. So when I went and told everybody, Halloween 3 sucked, what are you talking about? They said, no, Halloween 3 sucks. Yeah, the first two are great. They're slashers. And then I, of course, found out about Michael Myers. I found out about Jamie Lee Curtis being in them and how good they were and the way that they build the tension and how scary they were. But when you have a really bad experience with it, it kind of puts you off on the other ones. Or at least it did me. If the first Friday the 13th you saw was part 8, you're probably not going to keep watching the series, right? I mean, Jason Takes Manhattan is ironically funny, but and it's not a good entry into the series. Halloween 3 for me was not a good entry into the series. It wasn't what I was looking for in a movie. So come 4 years later or so, I have seen or tried to see everything that I can get my hands on in the horror genre, good, bad, and otherwise. Big budget, low budget, all of them. And then the commercial comes on TV for Halloween 4 coming out. And it looked so good, right? To me, it was back to where they started. It was what I wanted to see in a Halloween movie or in a horror movie. It was a slasher. And I knew ahead of time what it was. So I made it a point to go and get and watch the first two movies. They're great. The first two at that point in time for me were really good movies, but I had seen them before. Not Halloween, not those two particular movies, but I had seen every bit and piece of Halloween in other movies by this point. The first three Nightmare movies, the first, four or five, whatever was out at the time, of the Friday movies, the first two um, Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and anything and everything else, like I said, that I could get my hands on that came after Halloween and used bits and pieces of that. Um, so for me, the first Halloween movie doesn't have the nostalgia that a lot of the other movies have. So the um, the holes in the story, the plot points that are missing are much more glaring to me than somebody who would have seen that earlier. Um, the lack of a backstory, the lack of gore, um, the way that not a whole lot happens until everything happens. Kind of, the slow burn of it just doesn't have the nostalgia for me that it has for so many other people. Looking at the movie now, I see how well it was directed. I see how well it was shot. That long steady cam at the beginning of it is really neat, even though I know now where the cuts are and how to look and see them. But if I'm not really thinking about it and I'm just sitting there watching it, it feels like one long continuous shot, and that's really cool. That's a neat little trick. The first person perspective for that part of it, which of course is one of the things that they used to make the first Friday the 13th as effective as it is. Everything's shot first person when the kills happen. Um, so I see where, I see the movies that took parts of it, bits and pieces, and for me, some of the others did it better. Some of the others are just pure rip-offs of it, pure clones of it. So for me, it just doesn't hold the nostalgia that it does for everybody else. Like I said, the lack of gore, the lack of a backstory is the biggest thing for me. You can't understand the bad guy. You can't understand what's going on. There's no rhyme or reason why it's happening. And to say that he's just evil, it just feels like a cop-out. It really feels like, yeah, let's make a movie where people get killed. And while that's a big part of slasher movies, is let's find a way to kill off the teenagers, I want something more. The simplified, it feels dumbed down to me. Even to this day, it feels kind of dumbed down. It's just, A to B movie. There's nothing in between, no deviation, no nothing. People have likened Michael Myers to Jaws. Well, Jaws is a shark. They're naturally aggressive. Michael Myers is a person. Tell me something. Anything. So it's just not me in a horror movie. All things considered, I enjoy it. I can put it on at any time and watch it, and all that. And as far as rating goes on this one, the pros of the way that it's done and the quality of it outweigh the cons of it enough that I'm still giving it a very high rating. It's just not exactly the top of the top for me. So my rating for this on my scale, and I'm going to use the old alphabet scale on this. My rating for this movie is an A plus. There is so much greatness here that just that much, just a touch of a backstory, just a touch of some humanity or lack thereof, and a reason behind it would move this movie so far up the chain that it would just be, for me, the classic that everybody else thinks it is. So I'm rating it A plus. I enjoy this movie, but it's just not my number one. Spoiler, I guess, for the ranking. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the quality will outweigh that when I weigh it against the others. But let's just say, for right this minute, I love this movie. I think it's awesome. But I think there are better choices out there. So overall, I give this movie an A plus. I think it's great. And if you haven't seen it yet, what the hell is wrong with you? Alright, so that's me for today. There's advocacy links and everything else in the description below that there always is in my videos. Don't forget the survey that's down there. Have a Facebook page now for this channel. Please take a moment and join my Facebook. You'll get to see when the videos come out. Also follow me on Twitter, and I have a Letterboxed, by the way. So, yeah, as always, y'all have a good one.